Hey folks, this is Tolly and welcome to some more game dev. It has been about a week since we have done any streaming. The last time we streamed was January 5th, it looks like, and we're on the 13th. So, yeah, updates, there isn't a lot. Getting back into the rhythm of doing work and not having like that kind of vacation period where we were able to just consistently, with no context switching, work on infinite retries to defeat the Demon Lord. It's been a bit of a switch up to try and get back into that, like, okay, work and then try and do some game development stuff in the evening. And that context switching has been more difficult to get back into than I anticipated. So I've been a bit drained, but we're starting back in. And this evening I figured I would use a stream to try and get me, like, you know, set back up again. Because I'm having a hard time focusing. So we're just going to jump on camera here. We're going to rubber duck and we're going to solve problems. And I wasn't even sure where to start. And literally 10 minutes before starting the stream, I was like, you know what? Options screen. Let's just pick something off the list and let's just do it. So that's what we're going to do. Also, thank you, Amorphous, for 49 months of subscription. And again, at tier 3. Appreciate it. Surprise stream out of nowhere. A little bit. I would have liked to have scheduled it a little bit sooner, but I just wasn't sure whether or not I was going to be mentally in the zone. But I do think I want to try tomorrow around the same time as well. I don't know what we'll do then, but we'll try another stream tomorrow around this time. Okay, let's jump into it though. I want to jump into Unity, because I have been like kind of in this world of like WebGL and Windows builds, trying to see if I could get the game working in like browser essentially and doing a bunch of performance work. And that's fine the past week, but it's not necessarily super game specific. And I want to jump back into actually working on the game itself. Let's switch up the background music. I don't know if I want to go right to Frail, because I feel like that may cause me to go to sleep. So we're going to go to Aged Oak for a little bit here. More upbeat, but also less dramatic. So, in the game, I think we're in a good spot. I feel like I haven't really even played the game. I've been like doing performance testing the last little while here, but I haven't even run through what we have in a while. So we've got our initial cutscenes. Heroes having a conversation. We go down. I still want to change this outro. I don't love the tile fall. It was neat at the time, but I feel like I'd prefer to have her like cast a spell or something and be more dynamic. Yeah, so I've spent a lot of the last week here just kind of like playing around in these spaces, trying to see how performance is. I did realize that it's actually really straightforward to create a sprite atlas in Unity, which definitely has improved performance on Windows builds. Right now, at least according to my current frame rate kind of logic, it looks like we're getting like somewhere in the range of 600 frames per second uncapped. So I probably can cap that to 60 frames and we'll be fine. But WebGL, I'm only able to get about 34 frames per second, but then when a room like this is fully revealed with all the tiles and the props, it kind of drops down to somewhere in the range of like 25, 26 frames per second, which has been a struggle because WebGL is not super easy to kind of profile and try and figure out where you're losing that frame rate. So I feel like I've kind of got myself into a bit of a rabbit hole where I'm just like trying to solve these like performance issues. And I really just want to go back to working on the video game itself. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. I need to do a dialogue pass. A lot of this is still pretty placeholder. I'm happy with the progression and the choosing of your abilities, the UI slowly unlocking. We also made it so you cannot unlock the skill tree area until you have leveled up. I guess that is one other thing I worked on over the past couple of days here since we've last streamed, is I did set up a new type of flag. I created another kind of backend manager in here called backend metric, and the metrics right now there's only one type, but it essentially listens for a specific event name which is handled via design data. So if we were to bring in the design data stuff and we take a look at the metrics section, I have like a metric for ability level up, and it's listening for the event ability spec level up notification. And if we were to look at the ability spec, we would see here that it's now posting a notification here with that same string value. So I have essentially a metric that's tracking every time that event happens, and it is incrementing that value somewhere in here. Yeah, on whatever event it's supposed to listen to, it's going to increment a value, and it's going to call a callback. And then I made a new type of flag called metric flag, which have been essentially every time that metric updates, it checks to see whether or not the metric amount is the amount that that flag is expecting, and then it sets itself to complete. That system's mostly set up for making it so that we can have that cutscene with the goddess where you learn about leveling up a skill happen after you've gained at least one skill point. So I can set up a flag that says, hey, level up must be at least a value of 1, and if it's at least a value of 1, then when you go back to the goddess realm, you'll get a kind of notification about leveling up, essentially. And if you just walk around in circles and eventually just run out of time without ever actually gaining one full level, when you go back to the goddess realm, you won't get that cutscene. So again, metric flags I think are going to be pretty important and pretty valuable in terms of like locking out specific things like tutorial information or even just like narrative cutscenes until I've tracked the player has done certain events. Essentially, oh, you've killed 5 slimes, we can have a little event or a little narrative moment with the goddess because of that. So again, just a small system. It's really just kind of continuing on the same flag architecture that we already have, just improving it and building on it. When we do the slash here, heroes popping quite heavily. That's something I need to fix. Yeah, we haven't finished setting up props for all these rooms. This one's still super placeholder. Okay. So yeah, we're not in a bad spot. Oh, we just barely missed because I spent some time wandering around in circles. We did not get to the first goddess statue. But we did level up enough to be able to gain our first little entrance into here, and then we can level up the skills. Drixie's been working on setting up or kind of doing some concepting of like this UI screen and this UI screen. There's some work here that we could probably also do this evening, but I'm just going to take a step back from all that. I just want to get back into it, and we're going to take a look at the options screen. So here, I'd like to have the ability to go to a subscreen that allows you to adjust your audio, and I think also set your controls. Because right now, all the controls, at least on controller, are D-pad based, but I'd like to let you choose whether or not you want to use the D-pad or the joystick. Or maybe more accurately, I want to let you choose whether or not you want to have up and down mapped to going left and right on the tiles, or whether or not you actually want to push 45 degrees on the joystick to match the visuals of the 45 degrees on the tile. I still don't know how I'm going to do that 45 degree logic, but it's something I want to do. So let's make a new screen, because this is going to be pretty straightforward. And again, I just feel like I've been so out of the zone on this stuff. I just want to jump in with something really simple. And I know building a screen is something I can do without having to think about it a whole lot, if I can find the right spot in the files. Okay, so not under the JRPG stuff. We're looking under scripts, I think. No, front end. And then for whatever reason, I made the decision a long time ago to put all of the screen stuff inside of this front end folder under scripts, which I don't necessarily love now. All the other data is in other locations, but I don't feel like moving everything tonight. So let's just make a new folder in here called Options. And this one's probably going to do some logic that we've never done before. So we're probably going to do a base of... Ooh, which screen is most likely to be a good reference for us to work off of? We most recently built the checkpoint selection stuff here. That was what type of screen? That was a menu list, and that was operating on data types of the checkpoint flag, and it would take a list of checkpoint flags to populate the buttons with. What's weird about this one is most of our other screens are generated. They're actually like creating a bunch of different buttons based off of what abilities you have or other context. But the options screen isn't really going to be data driven. We're not going to have a different button based off of some design data. I would expect this screen is actually pretty fixed in how it is laid out. And there's not actually a lot of references for that. The closest one is going to be back in Era of Embers in the JRPG assets, because that's what it was known before it became Era to me, before we had decided on that naming. So if we go under scripts, front end, screens, I think most likely the main menu is the closest example of something like that. So this one here basically had a couple of different options, and each one were still in a list, right? And only the first three were actually set up. And those menus this just grabbed the buttons and then initialized them essentially. And it took some data for string. Okay. Wait, does boot work somewhat similarly? If we take a look at the boot menu, when we actually go in... Ah, this is set up the same way, actually. Yeah, okay. So it's a fixed buttons that are just placed in the screen. They're not generated from a pool. And each one of these buttons are still poolable screen objects internally. Huh. But it is operating on essentially a data structure that's just a string and a string. The question is, what happens when we move, say, a slider left and right? Like, how are we going to do that? That's going to have to be... I don't know how we're going to do that. You know what? Let's start with boot, because boot is one of the simplest examples, and it has fixed information. So we will make a copy of all of this. We're going to paste it inside of the options folder, and we're going to get renaming some files. And then we're going to start building it. We'll lay it out and then go from there. I also feel like this screen should be accessible from like a pause menu as well. You should likely be able to get here if you're in the game walking around on the tiles, and you should be able to bring up like audio and controls and change those as well. Okay, so this is going to become options screen. This will become options. I guess it's option. If it's the option screen, then it's the option prefab. It feels weird though. And then the option menu. Okay. So going back here, this option prefab will go in here. It'll likely go at the very bottom. And then we'll go in from here because editing the prefab in context helps a little bit with layout and stuff. I'll go 2D so we can see everything. I don't think it has a background image. Realistically, if it was to have anything, I feel like it would have a bordered box. Basically treat it like a pop-up is likely the easiest approach. If we just search for one of these, this one's likely a good candidate. And let's make it, say, 90% of the screen. And center aligned. We're gonna have to change the pivot points. Okay, so that should be in the middle of the screen. We'll want to give it some sort of text at the top that lets us know what we're doing here. So this is going to be options. Let's make it size 32. Let's make it top aligned. Let's go 64 times 2 to start, and we'll make it the same width. Maybe double that. Double the width. And then let's give it a pivot point at the top. Something about that seems odd to me. Oh, because I guess technically all of this should be under the background so that everything is anchored from the box itself. Yeah. Now this height is too extreme. We do 64 and then top align and center aligned. Okay. That still feels too big. Let's do 48. That's feeling better. Now for this menu here, let's go left aligned on this one. Let's have it 50 in. And if this title piece is 48, let's bring that down -48 from a top anchor. And that looks pretty good. I'm also going to grab... Actually, I'm just going to rename and reuse this. We should have some sort of line, divider line. Let's grab one of these. I'll probably get Drixie to build us something later. More specific. Oh, interesting. This does not have transparency. There we go. That's a better one. And this is going to be too small. What if I double the size of it? Is that looking better? Not really. But it's still nicer than floating text. The other option is, instead of trying to do like an underline here, let's turn off the gizmos for a second so we can see it. Yeah, instead of doing an underline, we could do the options in a box. .256 by 48. Give it the same center aligned anchoring at the top. Oh, odd. I would expect the title to render in front of it if it's lower in the list. But that does not seem to be the case. Oh, it does if I drag it underneath. Interesting. I don't know. What probably would make more sense is something like that. No, that's going to be too high. Because now it's going to... This outer box here is showing the outer frame of the kind of screen. So this is going to extend outside of the screen area. So we need to lower it by some amount. Like that. But now that looks weirdly offset. Okay. Let's go with something like that for now. We don't need to worry too much about the aesthetic part of it. That can always be adjusted. Okay. Then we're going to need a couple of options. Most options screens tend to have like tabs, so you'd have a section for graphics, a section for audio, so you can have different setups. Do I want to go right to that level? Yeah, if we're gonna do this, we probably should set it up correctly. Yeah. Okay, so if we're going to do that, we're going to change this list to, instead of being a vertical list, we're going to change this to be a horizontal layout group. Size 4, yeah, that's all fine. So we have to remove the other one in order to make this. We're going to extend it all the way across. We're going to make it the whole length. Let's do... maybe something like anchor but stretched, like that. Then we should be able to set those so it's all the way to the edge, and then we can do 32 on this side and 32 on that side. Then for the height, we probably don't need much more than 32 either. This button is going to become like sound, and this will probably become... I'd actually need to look at some other games to get an idea, but maybe it feels more natural for this to be gameplay and this one to be sound. Sure. Don't force the sizing. This needs to match the same width. And then we can give a little bit of space between each one, let's say 8 pixels. Okay, and then if we wanted to, we could have another entry at this sizing, or another quote-unquote tab. What is the whole width of this box now? If we were to go back to here, 512. Well, it's funny how that worked out to be such an ordinary number. So, I can't picture what they would be, but I feel like 4 option tabs feels right to me. So if we had 512 divided by 4, we'd get 128 per button. And we'd want 4 of these. And we're going to want to make sure each one of these is also 128. There's ways of setting these up so that they're going to align correctly. Now, that's going to overextend the box a little bit because we have 3 spaces of 8 pixels in between each of these. So we need to account for that in sizing of the boxes. So... Mr. Purple in Twitch chat casts confusion. Super effective. Okay. Let's do 128. If we want to give 8 pixels between each of these, then we need to do 512 minus 24, 8 times 3. Times 3. 8 times 3. 24. 512 minus... And then divide that by 488 divided by 4. Oh my god. 512 minus 24 divided by 4. 122. Okay. Perfect. So now we have 4 tabs. I don't know what they're all going to be, but we have 4 tabs for our options. And we could have gameplay, sound, and I don't know what I would use these last 2 for, but we have spacing for them. Okay. I'm not exactly sure. Oh. A check if I'm real a check on... Sure. Okay. So now we have to figure out how we're going to go between these tabs. And actually go to like a lower level, which will be the individual components. So we need to swap this from boot screen to our new option screen. We also need to update our scripts to match the new naming scheme. So this becomes option screen. It's not going to update any music. Amorphous with the hydrate. I can redeem. Thank you. If I can find... There. Okay, cool. Hydration done. I don't know what happens when we hit on submit here. So this is the option screen. It basically does nothing right now, which is perfectly fine. And then we're going to have the option menu, which is going to initialize each of the lower tabs. What data type they need, I don't know at this point. Now, some of our screens tend to have multiple screens inside of the single prefab. This is probably another example of that. So if we look at the skill screen, it actually has 2 screens embedded inside of itself. The base screen for selecting the skills, and then the actual nodes for each of those skills in each skill's skill tree. Skill. Probably not clear, but that's fine. Okay, so in here, I think we're going to have something similar. We're going to have the option tab menu list, and then this is the option background, this is the option components, this will be called option screen, and then I think we're going to want a screen for each section of of the tabs? Huh. I feel like I chose options because I felt like it would be an easy jump back in and like something I could do on stream relatively easily. And I think we're getting through it, but it definitely is a little bit more work than I initially thought it was going to be, because there is some new problem solving for our menu system, which we have not had to deal with before. Okay, so we have the menu list set up here. We need to update our entity system, so this will become option screen, matching the exact same naming of the script. This will need to be the option components. Okay, so let's get it so we can open this, and then we'll figure out controls from there, because I think that'll give us a better understanding of where we go from here. So right now we have two buttons in here, one for continue, one for new game. We're going to move it so continue is above. That was a task someone had asked me to do, or had made a suggestion like a month ago about. And then we're going to add a options, and we're also going to add a quit, because right now there isn't a way to leave the game, and that seems important. And there's also a good possibility we should have like a Discord button in the demo, so that you can just click a button and it'll send you to the Discord. Maybe a YouTube button too. Amorphous in Twitch chat says, why do people need to leave the game? Just make it fun enough that it isn't a concern. Ah, yes. Sword Art Online strategy. Okay, so these two buttons could potentially also it's not ignore layout element. And then if we add this component to these and say ignore, it'll ignore the kind of grouping stuff that lays them out, and we can instead drag them wherever we want. So we can put Discord down here on the bottom, say somewhere like that, and YouTube down there somewhere. And maybe those should be replaced with icons that actually reflect the Discord and the YouTube with like select versions of them. But I think that's going to be okay for now. Cool. Then I need to add each of these buttons to this list. I also think I need to reverse the order. So this one, continue. In fact, maybe we just go through all of them. Continue goes here. This goes here. We're just going to add them in order. And now if I hit down, I'll go to Discord, and if I hit down again, I'll go to YouTube, and if I hit down one more time, I think I go back up to continue. I think these menus loop. Little weird, but should be fine. Okay. Now, inside of the boot screen, we currently have this saying stored data.arg1 is HUD. I assume that those are some old placeholder values that we still have in here. Yeah, this should be new game. Honestly, we probably should have like an underscore and something like that. Having spaces is kind of bad practice. Continue. I'm also going to rename these as well. So it's easier to tell which one is which. New game button. This becomes options with the ID being options. This becomes quit. And we can have that set the value. It's called next screen ID, but it's really just a string value identifier. Maybe we replace these main menu buttons with like a more fitting named one eventually. For now, this will continue to work okay. YouTube and YouTube. Okay. Naming all the things. See, this is the trick also with game dev. If you're not sure how you want to build something, just keep building all the data entry, and eventually you will have to deal with the problem, but not right away. Okay, so last thing I'd like to do here. Right now, this is somewhat weirdly set up. How large is a button? About 28 pixels? I think I want the continue button to also be set up to ignore the layout of the list, which is going to cause new game to move up. And then I'm going to want to move this back down. That's going to cause everything to move down. Unfortunate. Okay, let's drag these two out of the list. And continue. And then we're going to resize this down a bit. We know that the list was having each one of these be 28 with 4 pixels in between. So if we move it down 32, that should have the exact same layout. And then we can add these back underneath. Okay, so now continue will be in the same spot it always was, but I can now toggle it off and on without having to have the whole list move. Sure, let's say that's fine. Now in here, this is where things get a little weird because we're going to need to have a case statement for this, which feels gross. Essentially, depending on what button we select, we're going to want to do something different. If it's quit, we're going to leave the application. If it's Discord, we're going to, I think, call some sort of URL call. I'm not sure. I haven't done that in a while. This was always a bit hacky, whether it was in the main menu, in the boot screen. All of these have always been a bit on the weird side. I'm not going to worry about solving it perfectly today. We will continue with the weird if else. It's just going to look way worse than it ever has because we're going to be adding a lot more. If it is load screen, I do this. Yeah, because I guess originally this was designed such that we would pretty much always just pass arg1 in as the screen we were going to try and open. Actually, that still remains true. So if it's new game, we're going to try and transition to the Goddess Realm, basically. If it is load screen, or what should be... So this is trying to load next screen, load screen. This is going to try and load the option screen. Quit, YouTube, and Discord are going to be special logic, though. So they will need to be set up like new game. So this becomes quit, which I think is application dot quit. And then I can give it an exit code. Interesting. I wonder what the exit codes are. For now, let's just default say quit, and you're just quitting. I'm sure that's fine. Default is probably perfectly reasonable. Discord. Now, when I was typing out that, did I see open URL? I did. And then that needs a string URL. I don't feel super confident about testing that on stream, but if we went into I don't know, YouTube off on the second camera, I am we might get some overlapping audio. Let's see if I can mute that before it happens. Mute myself. Does this Discord link still work? It does? Okay. So then if we take that Discord link and we paste that in here, I think that'll open the Discord. And then if we go to our YouTube channel, it looks like it's this one. I think that might work. Surprisingly, pretty straightforward. Drixie redeeming the stretch. We will move the desk to the standing position and switch it up. Thank you as always, keeping me healthy. All right, we will be back in just a second though. All right, so standing's good. Okay. So, okay, completely lost what I was doing. So we'd set up those buttons. I guess we can just test it at this point. Oh, there's one more thing actually before we do a test. If we go into the data for sequences, where is the boot section here? How do we want to test? I'm going to copy one of the existing setups. Splash is probably a good one. We made that recently also. I hadn't really talked about the Splash stuff, but it's related to the builds. I added a Splash screen in the past week since we've last streamed. Added a Splash screen in the past few weeks since we last streamed. I don't know why, that feels like a tongue twister to me. So this will be options close. This will be option open. And this will be the screen transitions for options. And then we will add that to our list of screen transitions here. And then we're going to have a from boot screen to splash. We will do splash open. We shouldn't need to do boot screen close because this is kind of a pop-up essentially. So we just need to open it. And then if we're going from splash... Oh no, sorry. We're going from options. From options to options. And this goes to boot. Okay, so if we're going... Oh no, I gotta flip this. If we are going from the boot screen to the option screen, we are going to do option open. And then if we are doing from the boot screen, from the option screen to the boot screen, we're going to do option close. And we shouldn't have to do anything for the boot screen reopening because it should just be in the background. Okay, so then we have to go to our screen transition, compile transitions, which should add the 2 new ones that we just created. Yeah, boot to options. And eventually we'll add more transitions from like gameplay, front end. Actually, it's probably going to be the combat ability select screen will go to options because that's when we give you control over the player. We need to go back to the boot screen here. Okay, and so that like white road that we're seeing for just a second is the splash screen essentially. Ooh, continue is disappearing automatically. I was going to write some code to make continue turn on and off based off whether or not you had save files, but a little weird that it's disappearing before we even do anything. Where is our continue button? Oh. Interesting. Okay, so there's some weird setup there. If we hit options, that opened the splash screen. Okay. So we clearly messed up the transition somehow. Oh, we never finished this part. We need to open the option components and turn those on. And we'll turn them off when we go to close it. Okay, cool. Did all the renaming and everything, but didn't actually update the actual data of the sequences. Okay, options. Okay, so that shows up, but it is showing up in the wrong order. So we look in here. How do we determine what shows up where? Is it based off of how high it is in the hierarchy? No. Oh, this has a canvas on it. Ah, okay. And we do want it at the bottom. Okay. Okay. Couple of bugs, but otherwise not too bad. We'll try editing them directly in the prefabs. So if we go into boot, let's start there. Continue needs to be top left aligned and at 32. Ah, this is correct. So why is it breaking? when we hit play. That's an odd one. Okay, let's go take a look at options. So this canvas doesn't need to be here. That was something we had set up for the boot screen specifically, to make sure the background image always showed up behind. Yeah, options, or sorry, continue is moving to a weird position with a weird setup. Huh. Something must be controlling the anchoring of the first button. What an odd bug. Yeah, because it's getting its anchor position set to bottom left align 0. It's not something that's happening inside of the main menu button class itself. And I don't think the boot screen had any special logic in here. No? Odd. What is moving you? Because we saw in the prefab it has this setup. Ooh, could it be an override on it? So we were modifying it in the prefab itself, but if we go take a look at scenes, core, front end, this prefab exists here with something overriding those values. Yes, they are overridden. So if we go in here and revert, and can I click on this thing? How do I... Prefab. How do I revert this option? Well, I can just manually set it back to be the same. Okay, so the prefab had an override on that specific data. That makes sense. Let's go back to boot, and we should see the continue option showing up correctly now. Okay. So if I just keep hitting down, it will go down to quit, and then if I go down again, it goes to Discord, and then somewhat weirdly, if I go left, right, it doesn't actually do anything here, but if I hit down again, it goes to YouTube. So, I'm not too concerned about. It's weird to control, but there's some extra buttons just to take you to social stuff. So if we hit this button, that does open up Discord. Okay, cool. That's neat. And if we go here and hit that button, it's happening off screen, but that does open up my YouTube channel. So those buttons are working. You can't see it on stream, I'm sorry. If I hit quit here, nothing happens. I suppose that makes sense. I would assume it would stop. The application would be the only other thing I would think of. But if we were doing an actual Windows build, I would hope application.quit would close it. I'll have to test that later because we don't have an easy way of doing that currently. And then if we hit options here, we do get this screen. It is still up and down that's navigating between these two tabs. So let's see if we can fix that. How do we decide? We change this to horizontal. So now it would be a horizontal style menu, and now A and D, or left and right on a controller, will navigate back and forth between those two tabs. The question becomes next, how do we actually go down? Do I need to hit A on the gameplay tab in order to go down into the gameplay screen? I feel like on select, we should update what's currently being viewed here, essentially toggle the components for gameplay off and sound on when we move between these two. But then when I want to actually go down into the sub menu, I guess I'll hit A to confirm my tab selection, and then if I hit back, I'll go up to selecting these again. It's a little weird, but we can start there. Maybe we make it so that you have to hit like L and R or something to switch between these, and you're always kind of just in selection of whichever top one you have chosen. I've done stuff like that in our screen system before, but the simplest solution to get up and running is just going to be push A to select which tab you'd like to go into. Option screen. We are overriding on submit. I'd like to override on select. I think it should be something like that. Let's go take a look at the menu screen. There should be some sort of, yeah, virtual on select. Okay, so anytime we switch buttons, we'll get this information. And I think it's the same idea here. We expect each button's argument 1 to be which screen it's going to open. And on submit will actually open that screen. But I think on select, we're not going to open the screen, but we're going to show that screen. Oh, that's a weird concept we've not run into before. We could bypass the screen system entirely and just like hard set the components to on. It's a bit odd, but we could do it that way. Or perhaps our screen controller, which has not been modified in a couple of years, needs an additional function. Because right now when we open a screen, we update to that screen, and we essentially call the open and like initialize all the logic and switch the menus and everything to be navigating that new screen when we call open. We also like update the selector. We do some logic around like the, you know, closing and opening the different pieces of the stacks. I'm not entirely sure what the overlay call does anymore. It looks like mainly it just doesn't call open on the previous screen. We need to open the new screen first, as it needs to change the selection, and we don't want to close the old screen and remove its callback listeners until it is closed. Interesting. We also don't call close on the previous screen if it's an overlay. And if it's an overlay, we refresh it slightly differently. Otherwise, there isn't much else that we do. It's possible the option screen should be marked as an overlay. I'm going to set it to an overlay just to kind of see what kind of problems that causes, because I don't know of many other screens that are set to overlay true right now. At least not in Infinite Retries. Heir of Embers had a couple, and I know I set them up for a reason. I built this system to do something, but I don't quite remember the nuances of what it's doing besides just like making sure that we don't break the state of the game when we're opening a screen over top of an existing one. Okay, sorry, got a little distracted with the overlay stuff, but I think if we wanted to call open we kind of want to call the transition logic. So we want to transition to the next screen, but we don't want to open the next screen. Is that right? I think so. If we're going to do option tabs, we want to reveal the screen, but not actually enter it until you actually hit A. I suppose if we were doing L and R to swap between the screens, then on select, we would actually want to open it. Interesting. Let's go take a quick look at the skill screen system, because it does something that I think we might want to emulate. I think there's a really actual elegant solution here if we use like L and R to switch between the menus. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the Goddess Realm. Is probably going to be the fastest way to get there. I hope I didn't leave things in a broken state. This should load up okay, though. We have no errors. Oh, we can't get there without a cutscene now. Okay, that's fine. What we will do, if we can find it, here we go, is if we turn back on gizmos, we can just move the skill screen interact to be somewhere we can access. Oh, but we can't do this without having gone through the initial tutorial flow to unlock a skill anyways. Okay, okay. Well, what is our current autosave? Because we did play through a bit of the game when we started. It's possible our last autosave should have us in a good spot. As long as I didn't just make a bad autosave by loading into the Goddess Realm directly there. This looks okay. Yeah, this is actually perfect. The goddess is revealing the space to us, and we get access. Great. So now if we unlock a couple of other skills here, we can see here that we can go into bash. If we go back, we still have bash selected. And if we go into shoot, we still have shoot selected. And if I go in here and then hit L and R, which I do not have a controller hooked up. One second. Okay. Okay, controller activate maybe? We cannot navigate. Let's unhook that, rehook it back up. Okay, we have control. Oh, left right doesn't do anything in here. I guess I hadn't tested that. It should be though. Node screen. Infinite retries version. Oh, it doesn't actually have the functionality hooked up. We never actually did it. Wow. Rip, huge burn. Okay, so let's take a look at the old Error of Embers codebase and look at skill select screen here. So this one had us set up for left trigger going to the previous button, finding that button's navigation up, which is essentially a selectable, getting its game object, and finding that new current button. Yeah. So this is a bit awkward, but essentially we would be able to grab whatever the current button we had selected on the previous screen was, whatever the current unit we had was, and we are able to, through a little bit of navigation nonsense, essentially find the up and down buttons. And when we hit left and right, we would actually update the information on the skill screen for the next unit up and down in the list, and we would update the previous screen selection to be that new button game object, essentially. It's a little awkward, but essentially what it would allow us to do is to hit left and right, and it would change the selection on the previous screen. My thought is we might be able to do the same thing here for the options screen and have it so that when you open an options screen, it auto opens into the first tab. And then if you hit left and right, it will call on select for the previous screen, which will need to close the current screen and reopen the next tab's screen. Is that too complicated? I feel like it's potentially a nice solution because we'd be able to have both menus operational at the same time. We'd be able to have the options screen, which has the tabs for which option option subsection you're in. And we'd be able to let normal D-pad and analog stick navigation work in the current screen or the current tab. So you'd never be able to go left and right like this. It would only be on left and right that you could navigate between these two options. Okay. I think I'm onto something, I just can't quite articulate it at this point. But I think if we steal a bit of this setup, we can do something kind of cool. So now the button itself would come from the previous screen. So we would have the unit select skill screen where we would select the unit and we would set that data of that object that was selected and send that through. Okay. Okay, it's a little bit more ambiguous in the options screen, but I think we can still do it. The question becomes, does this screen still get the on select calls even when it's not the active screen? Because when we call update previous selection and that peaks the previous screen, and it's kind of a weird way I'm doing this, the fact that I'm like popping the screen and then pushing it back on. I feel like I could just navigate backwards, but maybe it's something about doing this with a screen stack makes that not possible. I don't know. It's been a long time since I wrote this code, but something about that seems odd. Okay, so in here we grab last selection and we reset its selection, which basically makes it kind of text color change, I guess. and then set last selection. This is updating the screen controller's last selection value. And then last selection, get component, previous selection handler, activate. Huh. Yeah, it's doing a bit of weirdness. Passing game objects around a little bit without quite knowing what they are. Unlockable characters with the hydrate, appreciate it. Okay. So the question becomes, does this actually call to the screen? And it looks like no. It looks like the previous selection handler is mostly just changing the color and the interactivity of the button. But I would have expected a little bit more setup. But I've missed a couple of things, it seems. So how do we know when a button is normally selected? So if we go back to the options screen in here, we have this on select call. Where does this actually get run? Like, how does a screen know when a button is selected? Button callback. Okay. Inside of iScreen, which is what all screens are based off of, we have a button callback. And on that button callback, we can either have an on submit event, a on selected event, or an on deselected event. Where does the button callback come from? The menu. Okay, so the menu registers that callback. So then what does the menu do with that? We have this callback, and on button press, we call it with the callback type. Then we must also have an selection part as well. No. Okay, so this is used... Oh, I love my menu system, but also sometimes... Okay, so it's a lot of generics and a lot of... Okay, how are you operating? So you have a button callback, which gets registered with the menu, and that menu will call this callback on button press with the callback data type. And this function is registered through the menu component, which is defined by a couple of different menus, whether it's a list or a graph menu. Essentially, these things call the callback on button click and on select and on deselect. Okay. And selection listener is a class I built that says whenever this button is selected, we override the base Unity event and we call our internal event. Okay. So if the Unity system says that this button is selected, the screen receives a callback saying, hey, this data, this button was selected. So if we try and update the previous selection with left trigger, right now this is only updating last selection, which is using a previous selection handler to essentially just modify the button's interactivity and its color. But none of this code seems to lead to that previous button actually being selected. Update selection. Update selection in the menu. This is saying, hey, given a new button object. If it's null, then get the first one. Otherwise, try and select that object. Okay, so okay. So when we hit left trigger, we update the menu of this screen, not the previous screen, and we update the Unity selection system to select the button on this screen, not the previous screen, which is why I had to write a separate system to update the previous screen selection, where we actually go in and set whatever the last selection was to be this new game object, which is what's allowing us to left trigger, right trigger, and then when we hit back and go back to the previous screen, the right button is selected in that previous screen. But it does not actually call on select so that the screen can get a notification. Okay. I don't think this will work. Because I was hoping that if I wrote some left trigger, right trigger stuff in each of the subscreens, it would update the previous button and this call would just magically be hit. But at least the way that I currently have it built, hitting left and right will visually update, but not actually update the information on the screen level. Okay. I don't know if that makes any sense, chat. I'm sorry if it's a bit rambly, but the long and short of it is I don't think I can repurpose this code I already had written for the skill stuff for the option menu. Even though they are very similar, I think that I would need to rewrite or build some new logic. And that's not to say that that's not what I'll still do, but it's not a quick and easy, like, oh, I can just grab this left, right trigger button kind of code and just slam it in here and it'll just work. Appreciate it, Morphus. I appreciate it. Okay. So, I think the next solution, or the next step towards a solution, is we need to understand what the sub-screens look like. So if we look at the options prefab, right now we have just the tabs, but we need to actually come up with a set of components that would be underneath those tabs. So in here, we should have another set of components, which will be the gameplay option components, and that will need to have the same entity ID. And I think now this doesn't have the title information, it just has a menu. But instead of this menu, it will be a vertical menu list again. So we have to remove this one, add the vertical one, and then I think This is currently this like sub-sized screen. I don't think this needs a background image. I think this is somewhat arbitrary, but I'm going to just resize this box to be here, and then we're going to round that off a little bit. So 36, 36, looks like 100 or so. Maybe we go a little lower, 105. These numbers are probably not good, but that'll get us in the ballpark. Now, the sub list here, actually, we probably want to do some indentation. What did we do for the menu? We indented 32. I think we want to do the same thing here. So instead of... Okay, so it's 32 from the edge of the world. And then another 32 inwards. So I think this becomes 64. And this becomes 64. And I think that'll line up perfectly with the edge of this button, or at least pretty close. Then this one can be top left aligned here, and we can go in maybe, I don't know, 16 pixels, and then negative 16 from the top. Probably could even just be 8 and 8, to be honest. Okay. Then this doesn't need to be 512. Let's do stretch aligned, and we'll do 8 from the edge. Good. And then we'll do stretch align here. Do 8 from the bottom. Okay. I'm gonna do 216 just to kind of round the numbers off a bit. That's good. Now, these need to not be force expanded. We'll give them a spacing of, say, 4 pixels looks about right. What's the height of one of these buttons? It's overextending a little bit. This is 28. That looks to be 28 as well. Maybe there's some color matching issues, but I feel like if I set that to 0, it feels like there's some space in between still. Is that the texture? Yeah, I think the edge of this texture just happens to have the outer pixel matching. Okay. Yeah, we'll go 4 then, for now. We might update these values as we get better kind of button representations. Okay, now. I think the way this will work is we will have buttons, and those buttons will exist here. But I think the width of these should be as large as they need to be in this section. Let's say 500. Can I have this snap? Yeah, perfect. And then this becomes... Let's rename a couple of these. This becomes the gameplay button. This becomes sound button. This becomes extra 1 for now. I'm sure I'll need more tabs, but we'll just start here. Extra 2. Okay. Controls. Ooh, we might need a little bit more space here for this text. Appreciate the folks hanging out this evening. Seeing a couple of folks in chat. I don't know if I'm addressing everyone fully. I know Amorphous is hanging out. Appreciate Unlockables. And anyone else who's lurking, just, I hope you're having a good day. It's nice that, like, I haven't streamed in a week or so, and having people just hang out has been pretty fantastic. So appreciate you is all I'm trying to say. So I think this navigation one essentially needs 2 buttons next to it. Yeah, I'm not sure how this is gonna function. Because I don't know how I'm gonna describe what these things do. But I essentially want to have 2 different buttons. Yeah, I don't know what to describe these as. I essentially want to have a gameplay button that's going to let you control either you can push the joystick up and down, and that'll cause you to move up and down on the tiles kind of just based off of your movement in the world. I don't know how to, like, it's weird, but the controls for the game, either you have it so that when you push down directly on the D-pad, it actually goes down and to the left. Or I can make it so that hitting down and to the left on the D-pad actually moves you down and to the left. And sadly, I can't have both at the same time, because if you push down and to the left when I have it normally set up for down is like southwest, I guess. If you push southwest on the joystick when I have it set up so that it's just using south, north, east, west, then it might be that you move southwest, or it might be that you move northwest. It would get confusing. So I need some sort of option here that's going to let you choose between like normal cardinal or offset cardinal. And those aren't the right words. I just don't know what else to call it. I might even just need like an initial screen when you start the game with like actual visuals explaining what I'm talking about and letting you choose like option left or option right. Like which of these two would you like? Here's a graphic, and you can either select the left version of controls or the right version of controls. Or I just leave it default to the one that people like the most in the demo, and then we let you have the option to change between them if you want to go exploring that. Is that right? Cardinal? Is that how you... Directions? Yeah. Maybe that's not how you spell diagonal. I just reread what I wrote. Oh no, it is. Okay, my brain's just having the moment where it forgets how words work. Okay. That's probably okay. Oh, they're offset. There we go. Back in line. Okay, so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select gameplay. I'm going to go down to this navigation here. And then when I'm on this button, I don't want to navigate to these two. I kind of want to have these set up differently. Like maybe they need a different box of some kind. And essentially I'm going to be selecting one or the other. So I think if I'm on this navigation button for gameplay options and I push down, I would go to the next button. But I think these are kind of under this button. They're like attached to it. This is option 1. And this is option 2. And I think if I'm here and I hit left and right, it'll change between these. And if I hit down, I would go to the next button in order. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we have this menu button. And this is all under the control button. So this is the actual... This is the menu piece, because we always have, under each button, we have a thing called menu button, which is really the menu button background, really. And then we have option 1 and option 2. And I think I'd like to have these have a different representation. I can work with Drixie to figure out exactly how that is going to operate. But I think this needs a sub image. For selected. And this wouldn't be a button. It would just be a tick box. And if you hit left and right, that tick box toggles on and off, basically. I wouldn't even move it. I think it's just like, it just gets changed. 8 and 8. I might be able to even get the selection circle. I don't know if I like that. That feels a little weird to me. Maybe this goes away? It looks like something like that. So I navigate down to navigation and I push left and right and it moves back and forth between the checkboxes. Sure. I don't think this is fully working the way I would like. I'm gonna need to look at some other game menus for reference because I'm having a hard time visualizing what is like the normal way of doing this, but I think this is a way that could work. Sure. Good enough. So if that's the case, I don't think these are buttons that I would actually like hook up for menu navigation. Trying to figure out a way to mathematically align these perfectly, but I don't know of a good way of doing that besides eyeballing it. We could probably do some sort of math here to get it pretty close. Also got to be concerned about localization sizing too. That might become a problem later on. What's the sizing of this? Oh, interesting. It is at our kind of larger font size. So if we did have a problem with localization, we could drop the readability a little bit by making it a bit smaller, but have it actually be fitting. Okay, so let's say that's the navigation control button. So you come into gameplay, you can click down into navigation, and then you hit left and right, and it'll select between cardinal or diagonal. It's still not super clear. Maybe we add some more visuals, like a little, like, you know, a compass, kind of a map compass that shows like the analog stick with left and right, and then an analog stick with like diagonals. We get like a little visual image next to these words to help make it more readable. Honestly, maybe an image just to replace the text could also help with localization eventually as well. Yeah. Okay, so if that's the way that's set up, if we wanted to have another option, I'm not sure what other controls I would need at this point, but if we were to add another control option, we could have another thing here, which is option 2, and then we could have selection 1 and selection 2. No? Sure. Okay. So that could be a way of setting up our menus. If we wanted to have more than 2 selections on something, though, this isn't going to work. We could always scale down the font, but let's continue from here. Let's assume that this is the setup. Then we're going to want to do the same thing. We're going to copy this whole thing, and we're going to make a sound options components. Sound option components. Copy that whole thing, rename our entity object, and then we're going to have inside of this option menu tab another list. We'll turn off the gameplay ones, and then this one will be music. This one becomes music. This becomes sound effects. And I think instead of having options next to them, I think it's just one object here, which is going to be the whole length from this point forward. It's not going to have any text on it. That seems weird. We probably want to have some sort of numbering. So perhaps we... have it so this object is... aligned to this side over here. And if this is going to be like 100% at its largest, we could do something like that. And then to the left over here, this will become our actual like progress bar, which we must have some progress bars we can use for this. The health bars? No. How did we set up? Yep, that'll work. Make it the length. We can delete the indicator here. And we can just have this essentially move left and right. I want to go take a look at the enemy health bar to see if maybe we could just directly steal its frame and its setup. It's not going to be under props. I feel like it's prefab based, but maybe it isn't. Where do we keep those UI props? Health bar? No, we just searched that and we didn't see it. Enemy? Enemy tutorial stuff. There's the fill bar, but I kind of want the prefab itself. Unlockable characters, just seeing your message in Twitch chat. Cardinal directions is left, right, rotate, up, down, move, forward, back, and diagonal is up is north, right is east, left is west, down is south, correct? I don't know. We could, probably explain this easier with paint. So essentially, if you think about like the joystick, right? With like, you can kind of move the joystick up or left. Essentially that joystick can go this way, like can go in 360 directions. When I say cardinal directions, what I mean is when you push down, that goes this way on the tile map. So if there are a series of isometric tiles, essentially, each of those isometric tiles aren't going to map to our coordinate system exactly. The way that I like to play personally is that when I push down, I want it to go this way, in this direction. But I've had some friends play it, and they're constantly trying to use the joystick like this, where they're actually pushing it in the direction that they would visibly see the character wanting to move, essentially. And so this is what I'm referring to as diagonal controls, versus what I like is the cardinal controls. And again, I get the reasoning why this feels more intuitive to people, but maybe it's just growing up with a lot of tactics games. It feels more natural to do down is just, you know, it also, I use the D-pad a lot more. I find the analog stick doesn't really make a lot of sense to my brain. So I don't know, it's just a control thing. I've also had some people tell me that down should also have an option to make it so down goes this way. And that old tactical games tended to have that. I don't remember which one. Someone mentioned it to me though, that I might want to also just have like cardinal down is southwest. And actually, now that I mention that aloud, it might be worth going to look at some of those games to see how like old PlayStation Tactics games, like I don't know if it was Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre, but someone mentioned to me that there's definitely an option. Maybe Disgaea? I'm not sure. Unlockable characters asking, oh, why even give the option then? Like, just code the diagonal input to be treated as cardinal. Mostly because I want to have it function my way, and then I'm getting feedback from other people that they want it to function a different way. And in my experience, when it comes to stuff like controls, it's just easier to give people options. If people have things that they feel are more intuitive, let them choose how they want to have it be controlled. Instead of trying to dictate like, oh, I think this is the better way to play, just learn to like the way that I've set it up. It could just be a choice that I make, but I feel like I've gotten the feedback enough times from different people that like it probably needs to be a choice. And again, I've also shown it to people and they kind of just naturally get it. So like the way that it's default set up right now, it works for some people as well. It just feels like it's going to need to be an option thing. These games are like that Q*bert maybe, but I strongly believe that your up should be whatever is north. The problem though is that when we talk about north, if we like look at the game, it's not intuitive what north is. Amorphous also said above that like I won't know until I try, but I feel both of these are awkward. I would expect pushing down to jump diagonally to the next tile downwards. And I also see that. Like, I could see a world in which it makes more sense that if I pushed down here, it, like, moved the character diagonally to this spot. But, I don't know, for me right now, when I push down on the D-pad, I go here. And that feels right to my brain. This is up and down. But I also know that I've talked to some people, and they've said that, like, this should be down. If I push down on the D-pad, it should take me to the right. And, like, in order to move right now, so just to be clear, this is left, this is up, this is right, and this is down. And so if you do that on the joystick, that also works. But some people want to be able to hit 45 degrees on the joystick and move 45 degrees. But if you try and go 45 degrees, sometimes you go up and then sometimes you go to the right because you're kind of hitting between two spots. And so like that's where kind of the diagonal control would come in, is like letting you be able to say, hey, I want to be, if I hit somewhere in between up and right, I actually want to go to this tile. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we're all on board, and I think we all understand. Um, I think it's just a options are good. Is where I'm landing on it. I do think that we could 100% just decide to have. Oh, I can't exit out of this. We could just decide to just let the controls be the controls, but if I can give people options, I think it'll be better in the long run. Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding. So what is the idea then? Okay, the question is, could we make it so down left and down are both down? And not really, because if you move the joystick to down left, but like up a little bit, now is that left or is that down left? And so like it would get a little finicky to control because the system doesn't know which one you're trying to do. So I feel like I need to have some level of code that says, hey, if you have your controls set up this way, treat the in-between kind of 45s more accurately, I guess. Yeah, and I guess that's my point, is from my experience with this, I feel like it doesn't work. They do conflict with each other. The two options do conflict, which is why I want to have an ability to choose which one you want, because they do end up overlapping. Controls are such a hard thing to describe on stream, and it's something that I've been worried about while building this, is that I think the game looks really good when I'm showing it to people or when we're kind of looking at it on stream, but when it comes to actually like controlling it, I think the game may not work as well as I would hope. Because that does feel like the feedback I do get from friends when I show it to them, is that the controls are really awkward. The game's cool, but the controls are awkward. And so I think I'm just trying to get ahead of that on the demo. It's like the primary piece of feedback I keep coming to. And again, I don't want to take away the way that it works for me completely. That's why I wanted to let it be an option. But I am willing to accept that maybe the way I like having it controlled isn't the ideal setup, and it should be an option, but not the default. It's very possible that I am not the majority, which is always hard as a game developer to kind of try and come to a realization that what's intuitive to you is maybe not the right answer. Okay, that's a status. That's not what we're looking for. That's a hit element. That's a status bar for an enemy. Where's this located? Combat components? That's not it. That's the attack information. No, that's all old. Huh, I guess we'll go find an enemy. Sorry, I fell behind on chat. Also, I'm sorry if I'm not fully articulating either. Okay, let's turn off... Let's turn off this, and then that's what I'm looking for. What are you? You are a simple status. Where were you located? Okay, well, I'm not sure why it was so difficult to find that. Okay, I'm going to copy this directly, and we're going to take this over to the options screen. Oh, it was just right here, hidden in a couple folders above. Okay, and then we're going to dump this in here. We're going to put this inside of this section. And this was there. I think it goes in here even. And then what is the setup for this? It is 8 pixels from the left. Okay. It's way too small. Perfect. And then it's too low. Put it in the center. Let's center that piece and position that there. Let's then extend this section to be the whole length. Somewhere around there. Say 216. Even better, let's do 64 times 4. Nope. 64 times 3. A little bit longer, plus 32. 16? Sure, let's go with that. Let's do sliced. Oh, is this thing not set up to actually be sliced? Oh, it is not. Is that going to break if we do that? Let's give it a shot. So we're going to try slicing this. So we're going to bring this into here, and we're going to set this up in such a way that we should be able to make this as large as we want while keeping the same format. So that did break. Save. And then let's give this a much larger height of, say, like 20. That's good. Let's turn off the selection background now because we've got the sizing close. Then the inner health bar, we don't need the text. This one now needs to be the size, I think. No, it needs to be 1 pixel in. But it's not going to be quite 1 pixel because of the scaling. Oh, I see why I do this manually, or why I don't modify these manually. Why I do it all through images that are the exact right size, because otherwise we get wrong pixel values. I'm going to try also going back into the front end, because technically when we're modifying the prefab but not in context, some of the pixel stuff gets a little weird as well. So if we actually come into here where it's set up correctly and then go into options, we'll likely see a slightly different setup. Let's go 2D. Yeah, in fact, 1 pixel and 2 pixels is actually looking correct here. So if we fill that all the way to the end, that looks like it would work. That looks a little large. Oh, amorphous with the stretch 15 minutes ago. I didn't notice that. I'm gonna go back to sitting because it's important to switch up the positions, but I'm gonna do the squats first if we get 2 stretches in the same stream, I feel like squats is probably a reasonable redemption. Now, I did get feedback from Drixie last time. I got the hydrate. I'm pretty positive I got the hydrate, but I missed the stretch. Maybe I didn't. Okay, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to hydrate as well. But I got feedback from Drixie that the squats were very unenthusiastic last time. So we're going to try and be more enthusiastic. So we're going to do 10. We're going to do it. All right. All right. I wish I had like an animation for the avatar to represent this as well. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, enthusiasm, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wow, so enthusiastic. All right, lowering this desk back to a sitting position. Okay. We have returned. All right, so Drixie would be proud. I mean, I'll tell Drixie that I did enthusiastic squats, and then she'll watch the whole YouTube VOD, and I'll get an extra view on YouTube for it. Okay, let's do a scaling down. I think 20 is way too large for this. I think if we've set this up correctly with this being 1112, we should be able to scale this however we want, and the inner bar will move correctly. Let's go with like maybe 8 pixels wide. Let's give that a shot. It might still be too big, but we can try that. I mean, I'd also like to have maybe some sort of like dot indicator on the slider, but that's a fair amount more work to have a little piece that's going to move back and forth here on the edge. So we're just going to leave it as a health bar. I would like to tint it a different color. Neutral? No, that's something else. I mean, if we want to, I don't know, burpee seems a bit extreme. I feel like that is a good way to kill me. But we could get like 5 or something for like 5,000 channel points. Probably could do 5 and still be able to function after. I have been feeling like we need more channel point redemptions again. We played around with some kind of early kind of ideas. But I feel like we've kind of narrowed it down just to like squats and or sorry, stretches and hydrate. Speaking of, I need more water. We'll be right back. We are at about 2 hours on this stream. I feel like we should probably call it soon-ish, but at the same time, I feel like I've gotten more done in the past 2 hours than I have in a week. It's crazy how much more effective I am while streaming. It's just much harder to get distracted. Okay. We probably also want one more of these. I'm losing. Okay. I'm gonna hydrate again. Why am I not thinking? What is the term for the overall music volume? Why is this not coming to me? Yeah, we've got music and sound, but usually there's another slider to control both's volume. And I feel it's not general. Oh, right. Okay, maybe I am getting a little too sleepy. Okay. That's probably fine for this menu. So we'll have the master slider for the volume, we'll have music, we'll have sound effects. That's good enough. I also don't know if we want to give you full control on left and right here to go from, like, you know, 3 digits of control. We probably want to actually narrow it down to like 1 through 10 and just make it so that you're clicking through each click of the D-pad or the joystick is just moving it one spot. But we'll leave it like this for now. Okay, so if we have this turned off and then this turned on, then we have these options. If we turn that off and turn this on, we get these options. Now we need something to control those menus as you go up and down. So we need another screen. Right now we have the option screen. We're going to need another one of these, which will be... We might want to rename this one. Instead of calling this like option screen, it might want to be like option tab screen. But for now, we'll just go with sound option screen for this one. If Unity can figure out the compiling of it, looks like we're okay. So this becomes sound option screen. Okay, and then we will also need a gameplay option screen. Visual Studio is doing its Visual Studio thing off screen. Okay, gameplay option screen. Just thinking about it. Perfect. Now, we're going to set up each of these. as game objects. And this one gets this new script. And instead of pointing at the options tab menu list, this will point at the sound menu list. And we're going to rename that mostly so I can validate that I've dragged the right one in. Drag the right one in. And this becomes renamed to this. Okay, and this one gets renamed to this. And then this becomes gameplay. And this is going to be the gameplay menu list. And we will add that here, like so. Okay. And these are both set to auto deactivate on start. So that's good. Now we need to set up some more transition logic. So when we are transitioning from these screens, we're going to need 2 more versions of these. It did not do what I wanted. I copy and pasted, and it probably pasted them somewhere at the very bottom of the folder structure. I will have to go delete those files, but we will make a sound option close. Sound option open, and then gameplay versions as well. Much copy paste. Good. All right. So then this is going to be gameplay components is what's going to get active and deactivated here. I don't think we need this 1 second delay on these. Does boot have that? I think that's something we did for boot screen just to give it time for Unity to finish loading up. We shouldn't need this 0.2 delay for these screens or any other screens. Okay, then this one needs to open the sound stuff. Cool. Now we have to add some more transitions. So when we are going from the options screen to the... This is becoming unwieldy. We might want to make that drop down actually have some sub levels to it in some way. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but we should do something. So if we go from options, we don't want to close the options screen. We want to leave it open in the background, but we're going to do sound options open. And then when we reverse that and we go to the sound options, we're going to want to close it here when we go back to the options screen. Okay, same thing. We're going to do gameplay from options, and we're going to do gameplay open, and then we reverse that. We're going to go gameplay to options, and we're going to close gameplay. Doesn't matter which one of these I've dragged it into, but I'll put it in the one that makes most sense. Okay, because these two objects just get combined together into one massive sequence, so it doesn't really matter which one you put it into, because they just get combined. Okay. So then we can come back into here. We can compile the transitions from all the sub ones, and that should have added boot to options, options to boot, options to sound, sound to options, options to gameplay, gameplay to options. Okay, so we have all those transitions set up. So in theory, if we go into the options screen, when we actually call click in here, that's going to send what screen it wants to open. So I think that just becomes these names. I don't like this setup. Mostly because I'm going to have to click in and then hit back. And I think I would like to improve that to be more intuitive. But for the time being, I think this will work and will be functional. So if I come into this screen, I'll just see the two tabs with nothing below. It'll be empty, which is super awkward. But if I click on one of them and hit A on it, it will load up into that screen. And if I hit back, I'll be able to go to the other one, hit A, and go into that screen. Excuse me. I think that that will work. I just don't like it. But we'll figure out a better way to like auto select and then navigate between them later. And because these are both just opening option screens, I think this does just become on submit, open the screen. And realistically, we could have some sort of on select. We need to go back to boot. I suppose on select, we still could write some sort of like auto setup. Oh, why did that break? Oh, menu is not set up correctly on the subscreens? That I shouldn't need to go into the other screen to modify. We've been listening to Aged Oak for 2.5 hours. Let's finish with this one. Frigid Pillar. I do really like that piece for background ambience though. It feels like it doesn't distract from like anything mentally. I feel like there's been a couple of streams now where I've thrown on Aged Oak as like the background music and we've just ended up vibing to it for the whole stream basically. Okay, I'm looking for the setup for this menu. Yeah, it's missing something in here. So this needs to be this menu button and this menu button. I'm going to turn that on. We only have 2 in here. Yes. So if we hook that up correctly in here, we'll be able to hit up and down through these 2. And then in this one, this has 3. So we'll need to go into here and we'll set up this menu, the music version, and the sound effects version. Okay. I don't know why I feel the need to use the controller right now, but I do. There we go. So no break, but it didn't reveal the information. Interesting. Let's go take a look at the boot screen and see what's going on with it. Or sorry, the options screen in here. It did turn on the information. Ooh. Oh, we turned off the subcomponents. I think I just toggled off something I wasn't supposed to. Oh, yeah, I toggled off the wrong piece. We want to toggle these off. Although it has a script that auto turns them off by default, but yeah, I clicked the wrong one. Okay, now let's try that again. Okay, did I not save? Options. Gameplay is not toggled on. If I hit back, back is not doing anything. We said that we transitioned. Odd. Let's try sound to see if maybe I just somehow set up the gameplay options incorrectly. Nope, that is just not working. Okay, well, out of curiosity, if we manually turn it on, does it start functioning correctly? So we tried toggling on sound. No, we cannot navigate it all. Oh, we can navigate left and right. They're set up as vertical. But if I hit back, nothing happens. Oh, I saw that with the options screen as well. Okay, couple of fixes. Step one, let's make it so that these are vertical menus instead of horizontal. Okay. So then the other problem is these are just not getting toggled. But we did set it up correctly, I thought. Let's double check the actual final transitions in here to make sure this stuff was set up right. So this is on options to gameplay. It should be doing gameplay open. And on this one should be doing sound options open. And that's doing sound options component.toggle on. And that's doing gameplay options components toggle on. And I copied those directly from here and here. So that should be fine. And in fact, we saw it was fine with the other ones. Interesting. Did it get added twice in here with 2 versions? I don't see anywhere else that we're using options. And that's close. And that's close. Which is turning them off. We did remove that 0.1 second step that I didn't think we needed. But maybe we do for some reason. That's so weird. We can try with keyboard controls to see if somehow that's making a difference, but I was playing with the controller for the tests we were doing there. No, same effect. Okay. We're going to try going to the sequence step. Just gonna test it right at the source. That should just be a set active. Really simple one. One of our most basic sequence steps. Okay. Enable for the session. Seems good. Okay. Oh, no, it's reloading. Come on, debugging. I believe. Oh, it broke. That's fine. That's fine. It's connected. It just decided to be mad. But if we just restart, we should be okay now. It can be mad. It's okay, chat. It can be mad. Right, we're hitting some initial breakpoints here as the rest of the UI turns on. It's basically using the same set active to turn on most of this. We'll get hit here again as we turn on the UI for this, and if we hit gameplay, we are coming in here, and we are going to try and build some game objects. We do find one, which is the gameplay options component game object, which it should be the right one. We're going to come in here. We're going to set its activity to true. Game object, active in hierarchy, true. So the step is happening, and it's turning it on. Oh my goodness. That is a fun bug. I have not run into, I don't think, in a very long time. So these need to both be on, because my auto deactivate script on start turns them off. So by having them off to start with, it means that when you turn them on for the first time, the auto deactivate script activates and turns it off. That's why all of my UI must be on. I could probably fix that now with more understanding of, like, I don't know, how to not write bad code, because some of this stuff was written a long time ago. A better way to fix that is probably to make it so that the auto deactivate. No, it's still actually not an easy fix, because the auto deactivate has no way to know whether or not it was like turned off by default. Okay, so we can get in here now, but we can't hit back. Is that because it's an overlay? Or, you know what, we copied the boot screen. The boot screen probably doesn't have a back button hooked up. Option menu. Oh god, where'd my solution go? View, Solution Explorer. Yeah. The back, so we copied boot screen, and boot screen has a little bit of logic to make sure you don't try and hit back out of the boot screen. Because where would you go? You just close yourself out of the only UI that exists at that moment. But because we copied it, all the other screens also didn't respect the back button, essentially. Okay, options, gameplay, sounds. Okay, so we can now navigate into these, and then we can also go back here. Perfect. I'm sorry, I'm a coward. I won't let people get lost. Okay. So, yeah, I don't love the fact that, like, as I'm navigating between these, we don't get to see stuff. I think it would be neater if, when one of these is selected, it, like, preemptively, like, opens it. But we don't have any way of opening a screen. Like, we just don't have that functionality yet. It won't be hard to build something like that to, like, trigger the transition beforehand. But I'm going to have to do some thinking. Now, the other half of this is going to be left-right. So by default, we're hitting up and down on navigation to be able to maneuver between these. But this is not driven by any data. Like, when we have navigation, there should be some game object in the background that's related to, like, your save file, essentially. To keep track of, like, what options you as a user have selected for, like, volume and for this navigation. And so which one is selected should be driven by some sort of backend file, as well as if I hit left and right, it should swap between which one is selected. So those are both kind of weird. Let's turn off this control for now because it doesn't do anything. And let's also remove it from this array, so that the only option in the gameplay is going to just be the cardinal versus diagonal. I'm going to start with the music because I think the music is easier. So if we have a sound option screen, whatever one we currently have selected, we should be able to track. And then screens have the ability to process other input beyond just the up and down, known as process input. And this is how like ability select mostly works. So this thing actually processes the input and like tries to perform abilities and things because it's not navigating through like a menu. But essentially it knows that you're hitting buttons. But we also have directional input. Interesting. This is a pretty major hack, but I refuse to set up an update function for screens. So instead, here I'm waiting on a frame for the open logic in the screen controller to complete, and then I check to see if navigation is in progress, aka held down. And if so, we do input nav stuff, aka move. Interesting. So that's a bit of a hack. But how do we normally do process input for directional? There's a process directional input call. Oh, I didn't mean to pull that out. Okay, we're gonna hit stop. So on movement change, we send the information to this current screen. I assume there's two movement changes because one is for the direction input. Oh, it's actually called directly from... Oh, it's a pass-through. The combat ability system can update the direction. Oh, after we call the screen. Oh, that's neat. Okay, I see why I do it that way. Meanwhile, this one... is handled part of the UI input manager. Okay. Yeah, so basically any screen gets updated whenever the directional button is pressed. Hello, Zeskos? Zeskos? Probably mispronouncing that, as I often do, but welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a good evening, or day, or morning, or wherever it is for you. I hope it's good. We are just working on trying to hook up an options screen for our game demo that we're working towards. And in setting up that options screen, I'm just trying to figure out how I want to handle the different forms of input. So I think what we want to do is we want to have it so that when you push a directional button, where'd the screen controller go? This doesn't really care about D-pad or analog, right? No, the input system can be whatever it wants. It can be this event can come from the analog stick, it can come from the D-pad. It doesn't really matter. All of these are just button presses. So it just takes whatever the context is, packages it up, and sends it to the screen wholesale so that the screen can deal with that callback context of the input however it sees fit. And if we take a look at this one for reference, this one takes it in as a set of arguments, and it gets out the directional input, and then we read the vector2 out of that, and we pass that vector2 into like an internal process version for this particular screen. But I think if we just grab this whole thing, put this into the sound version, this should get the D-pad. Oh. It does not like that. Why do you not like that? Hides the inherited version. Interesting. Menu screen. It needs to call override, seems to be the problem. But why did the other screen not have to do that? Oh, because this is an I screen. It's not actually a menu screen. So because this one inherits from the menu screen, which does a bunch of extra logic to set up menus for us automatically behind the scenes, it already is instantiating the interfaced function. So now we have to override it in this particular case. Okay, not too bad. And then we need to include the input system in order for this to work. And now we can get the directional. Does the interface require you set up both versions? I guess it must in order for it to be accessible externally. Oh, it does not. So the D-pad version was only for, or sorry, the Vector 2 version was only for that specific screen. Oh, I guess this works simply because this takes an object, so it's actually recursively calling itself. That's funny. Meanwhile, in this case, because there happens to be a better fit with the Vector 2 version, I guess it calls the more accurate version of the function. Huh. Cool that just works. All right, so now that we have the direction vector, we should be able to get the probably the X value, I would guess. And if it is greater than 0, then you're pushing to the right on the D stick. Else, probably else if actually, because we don't want to do anything if you're not, if you're on 0, we want to ignore it. So if you push to the right, we're going to want to increase the sound of the current option you have selected. If you push to the left, we want to decrease the sound of the current option you have selected. Okay, a couple of problems. Number one, how do we know what we currently have selected? These menu buttons need to be updated with correct information. So this should say master volume, and then this should be, it's not really a screen ID, but we're going to have to just use the string value to figure it out. This will be music. And this will be sound effects. Okay. So then when we select a button, we will get a callback from our screen system, and we'll be able to tell from the data on that button what argument 1 was. And we can keep track of the last selected option. Music and sound effects. Now, when we modify the sounds, the reason I said this is going to be easier in gameplay is I think that we want to be modifying the audio mixer. So we have like kind of an audio mixer that our whole game runs under. And we already have these 3 options set up with some default values associated with them. I think if we can access this mixer, we should be able to just modify these volume sliders And we don't have to build like a back-end tracking system. That's why sound's a little bit easier. The trick is going to be, how do we access this audio mixer? Because this just exists in the project. And the audio manager, well, it does have a direct reference to it. So could I just... Could I just access it from the audio manager? So we keep track of the current audio mixer. Audio manager.instance.soundeffects. Audio mixer group. And then when we push left and right, we can just grab the current audio mixer groups. Audio mixer.volume. Oh, what is the syntax going to be here? How do we get access? Oh, this is not going to be as easy as just set float. I'm going to have to read some documentation. It's probably not too complicated, but yeah, because there might be multiple different values you might want to change, like, I don't know, attenuation or, you know, the echo or whatever you want to put on there. So modifying specifically the volume might be tricky. Yeah, normally we just use this to set the output. Oh, interesting. It sounds like some sound effects have different audio mixer groups, is what I have set up. I don't see any examples of that. I wonder if that was something I had built but not actually we ended up using yet. Yeah, I think I set this up because my anticipation was that different audio effects might want to have different mixer groups associated with them. But I think right now everything just uses sound effects. And that would still be the root one. We might add a child group that would be unique, that could have its own volume slider that the player wouldn't be able to control, but this would be the main one that would control for all sound effects. Okay. I'm going to do one quick Google search off camera over here just to see Unity audio mixer documentation, volume control, script. Couple of tutorials. No, most of the actual core documentation I'm finding right off the bat is not what I'm looking for. Got it. Yeah, okay. So set audio mixer volume is going to take a name of a parameter and then have a value. Do not call it in event functions as it can result in unexpected behavior. Don't call it an awake. That's fine. We're not going to be doing that. And then it looks like it's just set volume. Sets the exposed parameter volume in the audio mixer. In this example, the parameter is assumed to be the volume of a mixer group. It could be any exposed mixture parameter. If it's not already the previous volume, this is doing it on update. Yeah, we can just do it on input time, so that'll be a little bit more efficient, hopefully. Yeah, all right. That's not too bad. So in here, now this becomes set float, and the format was this plus the value. I guess the other tricky thing about this is we're going to need to modify some sort of central value. So when you hit left and right, we're going to need to increment some internal volume, which is not going to be... Yeah, we could do like get float of the volume and like just increment it that way. But I feel like this is all too... Like, this works, but I hate it. Mostly because it doesn't have, like, a good range. Like, we'll need eventually to be able to control this more finely for what the max is. We're also going to need to figure out what the max and min is, because we're going to need to figure out how much to move the slider next to the button. Which realistically could be completely separate. It doesn't even need to be directly called to. The way our system works is pretty handy. We can just make a like volume control component that just independently checks to see what the current values are and updates on refresh. Yeah. Yeah, this system probably operates completely independent. So when we push left and right, we just modify the value, and this just finds out about it. What makes the most sense to me is to probably have the audio manager handle it. So instead of doing this logic here, we likely should have audio manager just have some extra functionality in here. And we can just have... I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot. We have been streaming for 3 hours, and it is getting rather late for me. I feel like we're so close. We're so close. Okay, well, I think we probably should stop here. I feel like I'm fading pretty quick here. And I'm getting pretty repetitive, which is a good sign that I'm maybe not making the right choices. I think what I will do, though, when I come back to this, is we will move the control of the audio to be inside of Audio Manager, so that the sound options screen is simply doing Audio Manager .instance .up volume or something, and then it can figure out what that means internally, and it can do a down volume. We'll need to pass in which current like audio mixer we have. Maybe that's not even storing the mixer in here. Maybe it's just passing in a parameter of like current mixer name, and this shouldn't be an actual mixer object, but we just keep track of literally just data.stored. I said I was going to stop, I know, but just let me finish this thought. Okay. We probably just do this where we store whichever parameter was last selected, and then we just pass that parameter into Audio Manager, and Audio Manager can, based off of which string was last selected, update the associated mixer up or down. Doing something similar to this, but probably with a little bit more control for what the maximum volume and minimum volume is. Because I'll need to set like a decibel range of some kind that probably isn't just like max, but some sort of more realistic value. And then in here, for the actual sliders, these will probably just need to directly check the Audio Manager, and whatever the current settings are for that particular bar's audio mixer group, it'll just update the text and slider, and we can call refresh on each of these at the same time that we call audio up and down. Yeah, that won't be too bad. I think the trickier one will be the options screen, because we will need to kind of set up some sort of new save system for saving your current kind of config. But that won't be saved at the same level as the save screen, because we have a save manager, but that save manager checks for specific save keys. I guess it does just load a save file. Yeah, we can probably... It's already loading and unloading a save file already in here. It's just expecting that data to have... I don't know. I'll have to dig into this. Again, I'm too tired, but I think what we'll need to do is have the settings be saved separate from like a specific save file, but is just like at the root of the player's configuration. I don't know. That, again, it'll be a little trickier than the audio, but I think we got a good setup for the actual menus themselves. Wasn't too bad jumping in for a couple hours and just mostly getting the UI part functional. Now we're starting to get into like the tech problems of like actually making it so these things do something. But the actual navigation and movement between these screens is functional. And we should be able to have this screen show up inside of the gameplay as well. So if you were walking around in the world and you hit like the start button, I should be able to relatively easily make this thing appear at the same way, in the same way as what it's doing here. Okay, cool. Thanks folks for hanging out. Appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, I think. Same Tolhi time. Around the same start of this stream. We'll probably go for a similar 2 or 3 hours. And then probably won't get another stream until maybe the following weekend. But I'll continue to work on stuff off camera. Just won't have, I think, another slot to work on stuff while streaming. For now, I hope everyone has a good rest of their day. I don't know. This is totally signing out. Later, folks.